And a discussion
Definitely.
after we've done the reading. I think that's the whole point of having the reading in the first place, so that we get a sense of how it holds up as a unit in its own right, as a thing in itself, but also what we can contribute in terms of its further development. So how we can add to Andy's practice as it continues on this play. Is there anything you want to say in particular about what type of comments or what you'd like us to look for?
So yeah, interesting. I'm interested in what happens when this play is heard and heard by people. You know, what happens to it in terms of the narrative, the clarity of it, the unclarity of it. It's consciously quite an open text. I don't know if I'm looking particularly for ideas about actions or, you should do this, you should do that with it. But I'm interested in just hearing your response, your instinctive response, I suppose. This is a piece of work, like I said, downstairs, been in the making for a while. I'm getting close to what I hope is the final draft of it. I've never heard this read before. I've never heard this draft read. And so when Reading said, what could you possibly do when you're here? I said, well, it would be brilliant for me if we could have a little private reading of the play, because I would like to hear where I'm at with that draft. And I've done this all the way along. I've met with people and said, friends sometimes and performers that I know, and said, can you read it for me? Would you like to come round for dinner and we can read it together? But it feels like it's approaching a more formal place, in that now it's got an audience, as well as some readers, which is quite new actually, which is very new in relation to what might be happening. So I'm interested in what happens when an audience hears it and is involved in it. There are some new things that I've written into it that I wonder if they work, whatever work means. All of a sudden I'm quite nervous about it.
Andy?
Yeah.
Would you like me to read directions?
No, I'll do that.
Are you
That's
okay?
all right.
Okay.
Yeah. There are not many stage directions in this play. This play involves 3 people standing on stage in front of an audience and talking. For those of you who might have seen what I've done before, it usually involves me standing on stage and talking. Now it's 3 people. There isn't anything other than that. There won't be any other movement. There won't be like he goes to the kitchen and puts the kettle on. There isn't any of that. It is just a text where 3 people stand, and we'll see what happens. I'll read the stage directions. There is one stage direction really, which is blackout. There's a blackout. It's a first for me. I've never written a technical direction before. It's a new thing. That's kind of the biggest thing that I've done, is I've written a blackout, a few blackouts. There are 3 performers, 3 brilliant people have agreed to sight read this for me today. We haven't met yet. Hello, what's your name? Laura.
Bradley.
We met Bradley.
And Zoe.
And Zoe, we've met before, have we, Zoe?
No, I don't think so.
No, you've got a familiar face.
Oh.
Laura, Bradley and Zoe have agreed to brilliantly read this for us. I sent them an email that said, don't worry about getting it right. I don't know what that means. It also said, and I mean this, let's try and enjoy ourselves. Probably will enjoy themselves the least is me. But I want you to not feel ever that there is a right way to do this. I don't want you to feel that if you stumble or if you don't understand something or if you say it wrong, that you have messed it up. You can't mess it up. It can't be messed up. I'm really grateful to you for agreeing to read. So read clearly, read loudly, take your time. Take your time. If you want to ask a question and go, what's this? Just ask it. It's fine. We can stop and start again.
You did have one question, didn't you? Somebody had a question.
I was confused about this.
Yeah.
It goes on. I didn't know if it was like a simultaneous thing, but
No.
then I was like, wait, because I can say that and that at the same time.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like you go down the page like in columns.
The text appears in Act 1 in columns. The reason that it appears in columns is that I'm trying to save paper and save space.
Ecological.
Yeah, so it's just about going down the columns. Good question. Good
Yeah, that was
question.
Because the lines
Yeah.
are
All
so
same.
short that you
The
can
lines are
put
short.
on the same page.
Should be like twice the size.
Yeah.
I have imposed a restriction upon myself as a writer in Act 1 where the columns appear in that no line could be longer than 2 words. That's what I said. And then also you'll see that there is some choral speaking. Try it. If it doesn't work, we can just have one of you read it. But let's try it and see what happens. Have you decided who's playing what number? Have you? Who's playing what number?
1.
You two.
2, 3. Great, so 1, 2, 3. Here is the thing. This is written in English today. It's going to be performed in English. It's all going to be spoken. All the lines that 1 says are not spoken in the final version. They're signed.
Yeah.
Yeah? So when you hear number 1 speak, it's signed. But that's alright. Today it's not signed. Today it's spoken.
Okay.
It's not kind of like, ooh, have you not learnt it in sign language?
Sorry. Didn't get
You don't get that, no? It's just spoken today. At the end of March, the lines that 1 speaks will be translated into PSL. So I have got until the end of March to work on this draft, which is thankfully still quite a bit of time, although I've got some other things to do this month as well. Yes, enough. I'll read the stage directions. The play is called Summit. It's by Andy Smith, and it has a line on the front that says, "To hope is to give yourself to the future, and that commitment to the future makes the present inhabitable." Then there are some notes, and then we're into something called the prologue. And at the top of the prologue it says this: "A gentle and relaxed sense of something beginning, a chance and opportunity made for everyone in the room to settle."
Hello,
Hello.
and thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome to the studio space here in Reading.
Welcome to the studio space here in Reading.
This is a story about a meeting, a summit, the summit that gives you the play its title.
This is a story about a meeting, a summit, the summit that gives the play its title.
This play,
This play,
Summit,
Summit.
Summit,
Oh, sorry.
Fine.
a big and often international meeting. A meeting where the stakes are high, a meeting held to discuss something, an emergency or a crisis or a disaster. A meeting that usually happens to talk about something or things that going wrong might get sorted out, so that things can get better. A meeting called because there is a real need for action, or at least a need to think about and work out a situation might be improved. This is why the summit of our story happens.
This is what the summit of our story is about.
But then something happens at the summit.
Yes, something happens at the summit.
What happens at the summit isn't big or dramatic. You might even say that it seems significant, but it is sudden and it is unexpected.
Yes. What happens at the summit is that suddenly the lights go out.
Yes, the lights go out.
The lights go out.
This moment, the moment where the lights go out, represents a beginning. It represents the beginning of something. What it represents is a moment where things really begin to change. We don't know how they change exactly, not yet. We can know that, not yet. But that's what happens at the summit. The lights go out, and soon after this happens, then things begin to change. Soon after it happens, things very slowly begin to change.
Thanks.
Thanks. We are going to tell the story in 3 different ways, from 3 different perspectives, in 3 different parts or acts. Act 1 takes place in the future. It happens about 1,000 years in the future. It happens somewhere like this,
a room like this, about 1,000
years from now. In 1,000 years' time, some people will all gather together in a room like this in order to hear a story. The story they are there to hear is something. It will look something like this. In a minute, the lights will go out.
Yes, in a minute the lights will go out. Don't worry, it's not permanent.
It's not permanent. We will all be in the dark for a bit. Let's say about 30 seconds, and then the lights will come back on.
The lights will be out for about 30 seconds and then they'll come back on.
When they do, we want everyone to imagine that we are all here 1,000 years in the future. When the lights come back on, we want to pretend that we are all playing the people who are sitting like this, somewhere like this, somewhere like here, 1,000 years from now. We will all be here like this, but in about 3017. If it all seems a bit confusing, don't worry.
Yes, don't worry, we'll all work together and hopefully it will all make some sense.
Hopefully we can all work together to make it make some sense. The lights will go out, about 30 seconds they'll come back on. And when they do, we can all imagine that we're all somewhere like this, but about 30 years in the future. Okay?
Yes, is everyone okay with that?
Are you okay with that?
Great, let's go.
Just the last count. You all okay? Are you okay?
Yeah?
Great. So this act should be performed playfully and with lightness and with an attention to musicality, rhythm and pace. When gaps appear in text, space can be given. After about 30 seconds, the lights come back up again.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Ta, gracias, welcome.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome here.
Koibat Nahim. Yes, you are welcome.
You are welcome.
Yes, you are welcome.
Kudual.
Hello.
And thank you.
Marban.
We are all here.
Ha, si.
Let us begin.
She, let's begin, yes.
Yes, let's begin.
Look,
Look,
Shall.
look,
look, and see.
Look and see.
we made it.
We made it.
We made it.
Nos fiatas.
We made it.
Here. Yes, here.
Ciudad, yes, here.
Jaha. Yes, here are we.
This is a story.
This is a story.
This is a story.
Yes, this is story.
This story is story.
History. Hanashi.
This story is story.
Is story.
Of summit.
Summit. Yes, summit.
Yes, summit. Yes, story.
Historia of summit.
Yes, summit. Summit.
Summit.
Summit.
Summit.
Summit.
Summit was,
Meeting.
is meeting.
Was summit.
Meeting was summit.
Was meeting.
A meeting. Encontro.
Summit.
Samalan, a meeting.
A meeting.
A summit.
There was a summit.
Yes. There was a summit. Summit.
Summit.
Summit happened. At summit. Something happened. At summit.
Yes, something happened.
Yes. Ja. Summit happened.
Summit happened and then something happened.
Then something happened.
Then something happened.
Something happened.
Kasheng.
It was
Like this.
like this.
Like this. Detva.
Like this.
It was like this.
It was like this.
Summit was like this.
Like this.
Like this.
A meeting. It happened.
A meeting. It happened.
But suddenly, at summit,
Sobta. At summit.
Something happened.
yes, something happened.
Yes, something happened. Suddenly at summit.
Suddenly, at summit, the lights just went out.
Lights out.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Yes, the lights just went out.
Suddenly. Plötslig.
The lights went out.
The lights went out.
The lights just went out.
Lusari. Ut.
Lights out.
Summit happening.
Summit happening.
Then suddenly, achanak!
The lights just went out.
Lights out. Lights out. Suddenly, lights out.
Meeting.
Samalan.
Summit.
Summit.
For talking
For listening and talking.
and thinking.
Listening, talking.
Summit was happening.
Summit was happening. Thinking and talking.
Thinking and talking.
Talking and thinking.
Listening. Lohe.
Thinking, tenke. Thinking, 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 thinking. Then suddenly,
lights out.
this all 1,000
Hajara. 1,000. 1,000.
1,000 years ago.
years ago.
This all about 1,000 years ago.
About 1,000 years ago.
A
Summit.
summit.
A meeting. All talking, all listening, all ready for change.
Ready? Lister.
Ready? Ready?
Ready, ready. Jahiz, jahiz. For change.
For change.
Then suddenly,
Suddenly.
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 Suddenly. Suddenly. Suddenly. The lights just went out. It happened.
This happened.
it happened.
This happened. Kasheng. All happened.
It all happened long, long ago.
Yes. Shy. Long, long ago.
Loku happen. Lenje siden. Long ago.
It beginning. A moment.
It beginning. A moment.
A moment. And momentum.
A moment. A moment.
A moment. Beginning. Start of our story.
Beginning of story. Start of our story.
Start of our story.
The start.
The start.
The start of change.
Start of the change. Start of this story.
Start of our story.
Start of this story.
This story. Tatala.
Start of this story. The moment. A moment. The moment when everything started to change.
The moment when we say that change began.
Cambio. The moment. Moment. The moment. A moment. We say that we began.
The moment we say we got things started.
The moment we say the change slowly began.
Many thought that it was the end.
Thought that it was all the end. The end.
Thought then the end.
Or at least near the end.
Or very near the end.
But no, Ochi,
No, it wasn't.
it wasn't the end.
It was not the end.
It wasn't the end. It wasn't the end.
It wasn't the end. It wasn't even near.
Not even near end.
Nowhere. Near end.
It was not good.
Yes, it was not good.
But it was not the end.
Not even near end. No.
No, nihil.
It was actual beginning. Actual start.
It was actual beginning.
Actual beginning.
Beginning. Permulon. Beginning of story.
Beginning of story. Our story.
Our story. Beginning of story. This story.
This story. Beginning. Beginning of change. This story of change.
This story of change.
From then to now.
From then to now.
This story.
This story.
This story. This how. This story. Our story.
Our story. This.
This. Ta.
This. All this.
Loku. This, yes.
This, yes. Yes, this. All this.
Yes, this. All this. Just look.
Yes. Look. Just look.
Look.
Street. Look at all of this.
Look at this.
Look at us.
Look at us.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got confused.
There we go.
Look at this.
Look.
Khan, look.
Look. How far?
How far? How far?
How far we have come.
Look. How far? How far? How far?
Yes. Look. How far? How far we have come. Look. Yes, look. How far we have come. Now we are here.
Yes. Now do. Aha. This here. How here?
We here. Now here.
Us here. Now here.
Yes, here.
Yes, here.
Oku, Sanyu, us, all here.
All here. All from one moment.
All from one moment. That moment. That moment.
That moment. The moment. when lights went out, Svelte van Turan.
When suddenly, all the lights went out. Yes,
Yes, the lights went out long ago.
long ago, the lights went out.
And now we are here. Now we are here.
Now we are here, here. Now we are here from then.
From then, this here. From then, this, that then. This happened.
Yes, it happened.
It happened. All this all happened. It all happened 1,000 years ago.
Hajar, Taisicha, 1,000 years ago.
Yes, this all happened 1,000 years ago.
It happened like this.
It happened like this.
All happened. It happened.
All happened like this. All here.
All here like this.
And then, one moment. Momentum. A moment.
A simple moment.
A simple momentum.
Talking, listening,
Listening, talking.
listening, talking.
Hanacha. You are talking, listening. Everyone here.
Then suddenly, bloedzelig.
Suddenly, the lights just went out. Now here,
Here now, Ekuan.
like here, from then.
This here.
That there. She then. Back when. That summit. Camlet.
Yes, at summit.
Summit on. Because of crisis.
Summit all happened because of crisis.
We was. Or crisis. Or criz. Or crize. Summit was needed because of crize.
We was all crisis. There was all talk of what needed.
Talk of what needed, what was needed was summit. So summit.
So summit.
People at summit were talking and listening.
People at summit were talking and listening.
Talking and listening. Ascoltando.
We don't know that was said.
Don't know what was being said.
What was being said exactly? Precise. We don't know. No.
No, we don't know. No,
Blimey. No. We don't know.
There was a summit. It was
a summit. Someone was talking.
Someone was talking. Prata at summit.
at summit, at meeting. This meeting back then.
Back then,
It was under. It was back then.
there was talking and listening, and then suddenly, the lights just went out.
The lights just went out.
Speltevam, Luzdu ut. Suddenly, bloedzelig, the lights went out.
And from this, where
Yes, that. From there. Yes, that is where.
Yes, that is where is what when happen.
When something happened.
when summit happened, summit happened, summit happened.
It happened.
Yes, this happened.
Yes, this all happened.
From this momentum, we began.
From this moment, we could begin.
Yes, we could begin.
Yes, we began.
From then, it all started.
In yes, okay, I can't say that. Started. It all really started.
It all really started. It slowly began.
Yes, this was the moment when things all started and shifted.
Things moved, all shifted, all started to change.
Angefangen, we moved. Things moved.
Things moved, all moved in this moment.
We moved in that moment towards here, towards now.
Here, now,
Now, here. Here now.
Here, now. Hamed, daba,
all this, all that,
All this, all that.
all that happened.
all that happened. All this happened 1,000 years ago.
Yes, 1,000 miller years ago.
Now, years later,
Years later, now this, all this,
yes, this, all here,
all this has changed.
all this has changed.
All has changed.
From a genty, now changed, since that.
Now changed. Since then, things have changed.
Things have changed. Aleha, foranduet.
Just look and think.
Yes, look. Look and think.
Yes, think. Think. Think how things changed.
Think how things change.
Things change.
Things change. And now, we here.
Now we are here.
We are all here.
Here. Now.
Since then,
Since then. From then.
From then, things have all changed.
things have all changed.
We have moved forward.
We have fluidity forward. Yes,
Yes. We have.
we have. We have.
Since then. From then.
We all moved forward.
We have moved forward.
Things have moved forward.
And now we here.
We all are here.
We are all here.
We are all here.
Since then, we struggled.
Since then, we struggled.
We have all struggled.
We have worked hard. We have been working.
We have been working. We have kept working.
Worked hard. Kept working.
Kept up our struggle.
Kept up the struggle.
Yes, we have. We have kept up the struggle.
We have moved forward.
All has moved forward. Directiona.
We have got on. We have got on. Got on with it.
Yes, we have got on. Got on. We have got on with it.
Since then, things have changed. Ideas have changed.
We have changed. We are more.
We are more. More. We are more.
More established, controlled, satisfied, and free.
We have more freedom.
Yes, we are more free And we have ideas.
More ideas of things. Things like
Yes, things like
Things like
democracy, diplomacy, unity, identity, nationality, morality, ethics, and equality. Yes,
Yes.
no.
yes,
Yes.
Yes, now. We have more equality.
now we have more equality.
We have changed Verandret.
We have changed our systems.
Changed our systems. Systems like systems of
Patriarchy, monarchy, hierarchy, technology, law, and order.
There is less of all that.
There is less of these things.
less.
Less.
Less. Minus. Yes.
There is less mess, less capitalism, labour, pollution, population, confusion, privatisation, and devastation.
There is also more.
Yes, there is also more.
Poneche. More. There is also more.
More optimism, international relations, and freedom. There is more automation, communication, understanding, and better relations.
Yes, overall, there is better relations.
Yes, there is better relations. There is better welfare, better government, better work, better medicine, better health. There is better climate, a better environment.
Yes.
Generally, we are better. We are working less. We are working better. We are working.
Yes, we are working.
And now we are here.
We all are here. Yes.
Yes, with more trust.
More trust. Yes.
And more respect.
Yes, and more respect.
We know each other.
We know we other.
No other. Our other.
We are all other.
We are all other.
We are always other. Druga, Kala, Tiara, Kiala,
Always, always.
always, always.
Always. Always. Other.
Other.
We know. Sorry. We know. We now move forward together.
Together, we know how move forward together.
Forward. Together. Move forward. Together.
Forward together. Forward together.
Forward.
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 Together. From then. Back then.
From them, back then.
When there was all.
When there was all. Destruction,
Need. Greed. Want. Addiction. Lies. And misinformation.
And profit and loss.
ownership, production, and a global financial domination. And when it was
Nation fighting.
nation,
Fighting nation. Fighting nation.
fighting, nation.
Yes.
Yes, that was back then.
That was back then. Yes.
But now, we are here. We are all here.
Here, yes, we are all here.
We are All here. Yes, here. Saiha.
Yes, here. Like this.
Like this. With less.
with less
Less division. Less disease.
separation,
Less isolation. Less population.
less exclusion,
Less segregation.
less trouble,
Less anger.
and better education.
Yes. Better education. Now, things are better.
Yes, things are better.
We work, we keep working to make things better.
We work, keep working, and make things better.
We understand.
We understand. We can.
We can. We can. Kita can.
We can. Know. And not know.
We can not know and know. We can keep working.
Keep working. Move forward. Together. L'avant takran. We can. Carry on. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Carry on.
carry on.
Carry on.
This is the plan.
This is the plan.
Keep moving.
Keep going. Keep together.
Stay together.
Be together. Be here.
Be how.
We here. Be here. Us here.
Us here. All from one moment.
All from one moment. A moment. Momentum.
A moment. A moment. At summit.
At summit. Yes. At summit. Summit.
Something happened. At summit.
It was a beginning.
The start. From there to now.
From there to now.
From then to now.
Back then, all crisis. Crises. Christ.
Back then, all crisis. All crisis. All mess.
All bad. Or catastrophe. Or confusion. Or mess.
Yes. Mess. Everything mess. Everything mess.
Yes, everything mess.
With wars.
Demagogies. Referendums. Annexes. With terrorists. Presidents. Capitalists. And sexists. With overconsumption. And
global warming.
with
Leaders and losers and emergencies and
and
warnings. That then, back then, when things was all wrong.
Yes, back then, things was all wrong.
Things was all wrong. It was confused.
Things was confused. It was confused.
There was no agreement.
No. No agreement. Not many people were getting along. People were scared, frightened.
No one was listening. Nobody knew what we should do.
Nobody knew what we should do.
It was all mess.
It's all going wrong.
So cool. For summit.
Call for summit. Then summit. Summit. Then suddenly, the lights went out.
Yes. Suddenly, the lights just went out.
There was a summit, and suddenly, the lights just went out.
Now. Yes. Now. Now. Yes, now.
Now we try. Prover. 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 More.
Yes. We try. We try more.
We try more. More. More.
Back then, we didn't. We didn't try.
We didn't try. We wanted it all.
We wanted it all.
We wanted it all. We wanted it straight,
Or left.
or right,
Or black.
or white.
This.
Or that.
It was not great. It was bad behaviour.
It was bad behaviour.
It all led to crisis.
Yes, to crisis.
Crease.
All was all wrong. All was happening.
Yes, all was wrong. All was happening. All was going on.
And nobody knew what to do.
Nobody knew what to do.
Nobody knew what to do.
Or what indeed was to be done.
Solution needed. Solution, yes.
Solution needed. So summit. Summit.
Summit called. Summit planned.
Summit planned. Summit happened. A summit.
Summit.
Yes. Meeting.
People there. All meeting.
Persona da. All meeting.
To
talk.
To
To listen. To sort. To think. To plan.
To
To
do.
do. To be. To plan.
To
To
think.
think. To talk.
To work.
To say. And to see.
To see.
To see. To say. What we could do.
To see and say what we could do.
This was the plan.
This was the plan. Talk about. Think about. Change.
Think about. Talk about. Offer. Change.
Offer. Change.
But something happened.
Suddenly, the lights went out.
Yes. Yes. Lyseri ut.
The meeting, like this,
Meeting. Like this.
Talking. Listening.
Thinking. Being.
then suddenly, plötsligt, stop.
Suddenly. Stop.
Yes, suddenly, stop.
Lights out.
Lights out and summit over.
Summit over.
But then, soon after, change began.
We say, in that moment, change began.
Yes. In that moment, the change began.
And now, look.
Look,
Can. Tanana.
Here. We are.
Yes. Here we all are. Here we all are.
Yes. Look. Here we all are. Now. Here.
here, now. We say that this was the start.
Now we say that this was the start.
That this was the start.
Something happened.
Summit happened.
Something happened. Lights out. Summit.
Summit then, summit. Summit.
A moment.
A moment. Moment on.
A moment. Of darkness.
Of darkness. Darkness. Obscuridad. But a moment. A moment.
A moment when things all began to change.
Yes. A moment when things began to change. When we move forward.
Yes. A moment when things moved forward.
And started to very,
Very, very,
very,
Very. Very. Cuba. Maya.
very,
very slowly change.
very slowly change.
And from then, change began.
Yes. From then, change began.
From then, we began to move on.
Yes. We began to move on.
The lights went out. Then this began.
The lights went out. Then this began.
Summit needed.
Summit happened.
Something happened.
People there to talk, to listen, to meet, to think, to do, and be. People do that.
People done all that. Summit happened.
Summit happened.
Something happened. In a moment. Just a moment.
Yes. Just a moment.
A moment. Moment.
When suddenly the lights went out.
Yes. The lights went out. From a day. Like this.
Like this.
Blackout. Well done.
Is it alright if I could keep
What's that?
Is it alright if I could keep bases?
Yes, of course. Toilet break, everyone. Go for it. Great. Thanks, everyone. Well done. Thanks.
Andy,
Yeah.
I've got to rush. But one thing, because I'll probably forget to email you or anything. Are you talking about the Milan Conference in 1866?
No.
It really feels like you are. Do you know what the Milan Conference is?
No.
Or is it
1886.
1886 or
1886, yeah.
1886. Basically, it's the banning of BSL usage in schools.
Which didn't kind of get... BSL wasn't recognised as a language until
Yeah. 2003.
2003. Between 1886 and 2003, BSL was basically outlawed.
Yeah.
Um,
I knew about that, but I
Yeah.
didn't know about the Milan conference.
What made you think Andy was talking about that?
It's just like the language you were using and the way like it's spoken about in retrospect. Because they've only really apologised for it like 100 years later. They're like, we're sorry we did this massive thing that kind of ruined your education and like you were like we're
Your life.
moralism. And it was I don't know, it just kind of grabbed me and I was like, you know, you've got to
Brilliant.
to
So, no, I'm not, and I don't know what it is, but that's great that you think about that.
something to think about. That's why my
Yeah.
face was doing all those things. 'Cause
Yeah.
I have a very thinky face.
That's great, though. Yes, and, you know, was I thinking about it actually? No. Am I thinking about things like that? Yes.
Yeah. I think in the context I was like, that's interesting.
Right. Oh, you clever thing, you wouldn't think about the Milan conference. 1886, no, I didn't know about the Milan conference. That's great.
I feel like it was 1886, yeah.
No,
Possibly right.
Something like that, around then anyway.
So
But I
I was going to whack my jacket on.
I didn't know
You read
that-
my mind, you did.
I didn't know that BSL wasn't officially recognised until 2003.
I think so, yeah.
It's picture me.
Yeah, it's cold in here, isn't it?
It goes really weird. It goes really off.
In
It
Rome,
goes from like the Bahamas to like Alaska.
Yeah, it does.
All the differences between twins. Good. Nice one, everyone, including, is it Rory?
Bradley.
Bradley, sorry, Bradley.
Yeah.
Rory, that isn't here. He's
No,
on the-
you're doing very, very well.
Yeah, you're doing brilliantly. I mean, it's a big ask. Thanks. So we're going to get in, while we're waiting for Bradley, I will just say we're going to get into Act 2. And in Act 2, like I think I said downstairs, there is a speech that happens 3 times. And when one reads it, it's in BSL. When 2 reads it, it's spoken. And then the 3rd time it appears, which will be Bradley. Brilliant, Bradley, it's alright. It's nature calling. In Act 3,
In the performance.
in Act 3, I'm just talking about Act 2, when we get to you speaking the speech, I want you to just imagine that you're speaking it in another language. Ideally, a South Asian language, like I talked about downstairs. I'm really interested in it being something like Urdu or Bengali or something like that. Depending on the actor or the performer that I find to work with, it will be dependent on how they speak, what languages they speak. In the same way that Stephen, who's the deaf performer that I'm working with, in relation to what Simon was talking about, we're translating it to suit him. You know, his language, his dialect. You might know better than me, but Simon was talking about the different dialects, and I read somewhere, I don't know if this is true, but BSL was developed in Durham. Is that right? At Durham University. Well, it was the dictionary was developed there.
Yeah, the dictionary, which the language already existed, but the dictionary, like a formal dictionary,
The
I
formal
believe, was
dictionary.
first developed in Durham.
Yeah, like they had a lot to do with terms of like putting it all together
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, they
But
had a lot
there's
to do with that.
various projects, like even now, there's the BSL Corpus and the BSL Sign Bank, which are all attempts at categorising and formalising BSL, because it's still not really. There's a kind of recognised overarching one, which is why you have your signature and various other exam boards that can give you your certificate, but there's still not really a recognised
No.
entire kind of this is BSL,
Yeah.
especially because of regional variation. And what was I going to say? But yeah, it existed before that, and mainly because of the whole 1886
The Milan
oralist
Conference.
schools, which oralism, for anyone who doesn't know, is the prevailing idea that you need to teach a deaf person to emulate and read lip pattern and act as if they're a speaking person, because originally they thought that deafness also meant that there was a mental deficit, so they were dumb, and in order to make them smart again, they had to learn to speak per se. Obviously, that idea is very old-fashioned, but that's what oralist means, oralism. And yeah, under oralism is where BSL really thrived and became used kind of underground with all the students, because they were generally boarding schools, a very large percentage of deaf schools. So in their rooms, they tell each other stories in BSL. They tell these beautiful little imagery stories, and then it thrived from there, and then eventually 2003 became an actual language, and people trying to categorise it, but yes.
Yeah,
It's really recent, isn't it?
I think at one point during the 1880s and stuff, if you were caught using sign language, you'd be thrown in jail at one point,
Some places.
Yeah, in some places.
Not everywhere was
No,
that extreme, but they just didn't like.
Yeah, they just didn't like the whole
Didn't
concept
using
of it, did they?
Good.
Also, just before you go, I also
Go on.
have to shoot.
Alright.
But yeah, it was interesting, the first act. There was something very hypnotic about it. It was like
Yeah.
watching a lava lamp. It was something like
The
really,
actual equivalent of a lava.
there was something hypnotic about it.
Poster.
It really wasn't. It was quite
Everyone loves a
even
lava
like,
lamp, though.
exactly.
There's your imagery for the
Even
show.
sort of the rhythm of it was quite interesting, so that was an interesting point that sort of hooked me a little bit,
Thanks. Thanks for being here for the first act.
It's alright, no worries.
Great.
Alright.
So we're in black.
Alright, well, I'll see you all later.
See you later. Take it easy.
You too.
Is that your bag?
Might need that then.
Cheers, thank you. I'll see you all later. Take care. See you later.
So we're in the theatre and the lights have gone out and somebody goes on. It's not for me, I'm going. After about 10 seconds, the lights come up again.
Thanks. Is everyone okay? Great.
So,
The next act or part of the story takes place, or rather took place, about 5 years ago. 5 years before the summit of the story. 5 years before the moment where the lights suddenly go out. 5 years before the moment where everything begins to change. It happens, or rather happened, somewhere like this.
Okay?
Yes. What happened was that some people, we are all going to pretend to be those people, met in a place like this. And some of them, that's us three here, said some things. They all spoke in different languages. If it all sounds a bit confusing, don't worry. Don't worry. Even though they were speaking in different languages, everybody said pretty much the same thing. Everyone is going to say pretty much the same thing. Thanks. In a minute, we're all going to pretend we are some people somewhere like this, but about 5 years ago. So in about 2012. We'll put the lights on. Yeah. We'll put the lights out again, and when they come back up, after about 10 seconds this time, let's say we're all playing a group of people who were all somewhere like this about 5 years ago. We'll all be sitting or standing somewhere like this, about 5 years ago. Does this all make sense? Is everybody ready?
Great.
Great. Let's go.
Blackout. After about 10 seconds, the lights come up again.
Thanks and welcome.
Thanks and welcome.
Thanks and welcome.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Thanks.
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 Okay, let's begin.
Let's begin.
Yes, let's begin.
Thanks. Okay. So here we are, in what a lot of people say is a difficult and problematic situation. And we're all here now because we want to do something about it, or at least think about how we might do something about it. We live in a world that is full of all sorts of difficulties and contradictions and complications, and on what seems like a daily, even hourly basis, it seems to present us with even more. Right now it feels like a lot of things are happening, and a lot of people think that if we don't deal with these things now, or try to deal with them now, then it might be too late. It might just be too late. We know that a crisis or catastrophe or of some description, probably more than one, is on its way. We need to do something. We think it would be good, if we tried to do something. Yes, that's why we're here today. The world we live in is precarious. At the moment, it feels like things might be about to go just a little bit out of control. Sometimes it's hard to say or understand why these things are happening in the way that they are, but we think that soon, maybe in 50 or 100 years, or maybe even in as little as 5, things might seem even more difficult and complicated. We think that in as little as 5 years, things could be happening that make us think that this really is it, that this really is the beginning of the end. We think that at some point in the future we, or some people like us, might be sitting or standing somewhere like this, probably somewhere like this, wondering if there is really any way out of this mess. We live in a world full of division, separation and terrorism, a world of competition, exclusion and corruption. There are endless lies and misinformation. There are constant wars. There is mass division. There are problems with migration and immigration. Our climate and environment is changing. There is global and domestic violence. There is inequality and there is poverty. And we think that if we are not careful, if we don't do something, then very soon all of this will be happening more. We think that pretty soon a lot of people might be thinking that this is right, that this is the way that it's going to go, or even the way that it should go. We think that in a few years we might be starting to think that we shouldn't have taken what we have for granted, that none of this should be taken for granted. So here we are, to do something about it. Yes, it's something hard to imagine a future. It feels like the world is fractured and in trouble. Sometimes it feels as if the lights are about to go out. There is a mountain to climb, but we think we can do it. We need campaigns, activities, meetings, a summit even. We need small gestures, we need big gestures, we need actions and ideas at all levels. We need to find better ways of working and we need to work better. We need to do this even if we don't see results in our own lifetime. In fact, we need to know that it probably won't happen in our lifetime. But this doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing something about it now. The scale of this is international. The threat is massive. The response must be big. We need to have the ambition and drive and courage to try and work out where we are going. However much it seems sometimes however much it might sometimes feel like we just don't know where we are going, we need to use our imagination. We need to imagine that this, or at least some of this, might be possible. We need to think that this is possible, however hard or impossible it might seem. If we don't do something now, or at least soon, then things might be about to begin to take a very distinct turn for the worse. This is where we begin.
Thanks. Okay. So, here we are, in what a lot of people say is a difficult and problematic situation. And we're all here now because we want to do something about it. Or at least think about how we might do something about it. We live in a world that is full of all sorts of difficulties and contradictions and complications. And on what seems like a daily, even hourly basis, it seems to present us with even more. Right now, it feels like a lot of things are happening. And a lot of people think that if we don't deal with these things now, or try to deal with them now, then it might be too late. It might just be too late. We know that a crisis or catastrophe of some description, probably more than one, is on its way. We need to do something. We think it would be good if we tried to do something. That's why we're here today. The world we live in is precarious. At the moment, it feels like things might just be about to go a little bit out of our control. Sometimes it's hard to say or understand why things are happening in the way that they are, but we think that soon, maybe in 50 or 100 years, or maybe even as little as 5, things might seem even more difficult and complicated. We think that in as little as 5 years, things could be happening that make us think that this really is it, that this really is the beginning of the end. We think that at some point in the future we, or some people like us, might be sitting or standing somewhere like this, probably somewhere like this, wondering if there is really any way out of this mess. We live in a world full of division, separation and terrorism, a world full of competition, exclusion and corruption. There are endless lies and misinformation. There are constant wars. There is mass division. There are problems with migration and immigration. Our climate and environment is changing. There is global and domestic violence. There is inequality and there is poverty. And we think that if we are not careful, if we don't do something, then very soon all of this will be happening more. We think that pretty soon a lot of people might be thinking that this is right, that this is the way that it's going to go, or even the way that it should go. We think that in a few years we might be starting to think that we shouldn't have taken what we have for granted, that none of this should be taken for granted. So, here we are, to do something about it. Yes, it's sometimes hard to imagine a future. It feels like the world is fractured and in trouble. Sometimes it feels as if the lights are about to go out. There's a mountain to climb, but we think we can do it. We need campaigns, activities, meetings, a summit even. We need small gestures, we need big gestures, we need actions and ideas at all levels. We need to find better ways of working, we need to work better. We need to do this even if we don't see the result in our own lifetime. In fact, we need to know that it probably won't happen in our lifetime. But this doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing something about it now. The scale of this is international, the threat is massive, the response must be big. We need to have the ambition and drive and courage to try and work out where we are going, however much it might sometimes feel like we just don't know where we are going. We need to use our imagination. We need to imagine that this, or at least some of this, might be possible. We need to think that this is possible, however hard or impossible it might seem. If we don't do something now, or at least soon, then things might be about to begin to take a very distinct turn for the worst. This is where we begin.
Thanks. Okay. So, here we are. In what a lot of people say is a difficult and problematic situation. And we're all here now because we want to do something about it. Or at least think about how we might do something about it. We live in a world that is full of all sorts of difficulties and contradictions and complications. And on what seems like a daily, even hourly basis, it seems to present us with even more. Right now, it feels like a lot of things are happening, and a lot of people think that if we don't deal with these things now, or try to deal with them now, then it might be too late. It might just be too late. We know that a crisis or a catastrophe of some description, probably more than one, is on its way. We need to do something. We think it would be good if we tried to do something. That's why we are here today. The world we live in is precarious. At the moment it feels like things might be about to go just a little bit out of control. Sometimes it's hard to say or understand why things are happening in the way that they are, but we think that soon, maybe in 50 or 100 years, or maybe even as little as 5, things might seem even more difficult and complicated. We think that in as little as 5 years, things could be happening to make us think that this is really it. That this really is the beginning of the end. We think that at some point in the future, we, or some people like us, might be sitting or standing something like this, probably somewhere like this, wondering if there is really any way out of this mess. We live in a world full of division, separation, terrorism, a world of competition, exclusion and corruption. There are endless lies and misinformation. There are constant wars. There is mass division. There are problems with migration and immigration. Our climate and environment is changing. There is global and domestic violence. There is inequality and there is poverty. And we think that if we are not careful, if we don't do something, then very soon all of this will be happening more. We think that pretty soon a lot of people might be thinking that this is right, that this is the way that it's going to go, or even the way that it should go. We think that in a few years we might be starting to think that we shouldn't have taken what we have for granted, that none of this should be taken for granted. So, here we are, to do something about it. Yes, it's sometimes hard to imagine a future. It feels like the world is fractured and in trouble. Sometimes it feels as if the lights are about to go out. There is a mountain to climb, but we think we can do it. We need campaigns, activities, meetings, a summit even. We need small gestures, we need big gestures, we need actions and ideas at all levels. We need to find better ways of working, and we need to work better. We need to do this, even if we don't see the result in our own lifetime. In fact, we need to know that it probably won't happen in our lifetime. But this doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing something about it now. The scale of this is international. The threat is massive. The response must be big. We need to have the ambition and drive and courage to try and work it out where we are going. However much it might sometimes feel like we just don't know where we are going. We need to use our imagination. We need to imagine that this or at least some of this, might be possible. We need to think that this is possible, however hard or impossible it might seem. If we don't do something now, or at least soon, then things might be about to begin to take a very distinct turn for the worse. This is where we begin.
Yes.
Yes.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Blackout. After about 5 seconds, the lights come back up again.
Thanks.
Okay.
So here we are,
at the last act. The last act happens now, at the summit of the story. This is the summit. Soon we will get to the moment where something happens. The moment where the lights suddenly go out.
This happens.
Something happens. And in that moment, or rather just after it, things begin to change. Things very slowly begin to change. The lights are about to go out again. When they come back up this time, let's say that this is a summit, that we are all there, and this is happening now. Sorry.
It's so fun. It's so fun. Last line.
Let's go.
Blackout.
Thank you very much, readers.
No.
Should we give them? Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Andy.
It's alright.
Oh, I missed.
Sorry.
Three.
Sorry.
After about 5 seconds, the lights come back up again.
Thank you. Welcome.
Yes,
Welcome to
the summit. It's great to see so many of you have made it. You know that there are difficult times ahead. We know that there are difficult times ahead. But we want you to know that we are strong. We are strong because you have put your faith in us. We all know that the future is at stake. Your future, our future. And we're going to do everything that we can, everything in our power to help you. We are going to take control. We are going to meet these challenges head on. We are going to lead everyone through these traumatic and turbulent times. We will not be broken. We are going to regroup and rebuild and transform. We will do it for you. We want you
A blackout.
to trust us.
That's the end. That's the end.
Excellent. Thank you. Shall we give a round of applause to the readers now? Well done, guys. That was a very lovely reading. Okay,
And a
Andy.
big ask, and a big ask.
Yeah.
So thanks for just stepping up and going, we'll have a go. Thanks. It's great.
How do you want to do it? Do you want to ask, should we talk to members of the audience to give the readers a break and then come back to the readers?
Yeah.
You need to go. Do you want to say anything, Andy?
I mean, it was in the first act, those kind of the short, punchy lines, where it's like capitalism, corruption, all that. I found it very powerful because it was very short, very snappy, and kind of a long list of like all the issues that are happening in the society at the moment are very relevant. I just found it really powerful to like read and also hear that others read it as well.
Thanks. You read beautifully. Thanks.
Thank you.
You have to go, but
Yes,
I have
I
got a
do.
little thank you for the readers. It might seem a self-indulgent thing. I didn't know what to do really, but I brought you a copy of a play by me.
Thank you
We
so
are
much.
theatre students, so it's relevant.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you.
Thanks, readers. You're great. You were great,
So
Bradley.
good.
You gave us a little break as well when you went for that.
Yeah.
Take it easy, Bradley.
Thank you.
Have a
Excellent.
nice evening. Thanks.
Shall we hear from some of the others who sat very well?
Yeah, listeners, audience,
Thanks.
This is John. Hello, John.
Hello everyone.
John Luther from South Street, Reading, South Street Arts. Welcome.
That's right. I didn't see the little Twitch you clutch a script of. They played South Street last year.
It was in South Street last year. Great. So yeah, sorry.
Excellent. No, it's good. It's
Your
good.
chairing thing.
Yeah, to my chairing. Yeah, so maybe it'd be really nice to know what you guys were thinking when the reading was happening. Thoughts that were going through your mind, comments that you want to make.
Last year, I think you did Commonwealth here, Andy. Is that
That's right. Yeah.
And I thought in that one there was a lot of resonance. Because
Yeah.
I said, gosh, it feels very hypnotic, and you talked about using rhythms and things from children's, nursery rhymes
Yeah.
and things that you draw on. And I thought, from what Bradley was saying, it was really powerful that it was a long build-up of short, sharp sentences of affirmation and repetition of simple words, and then the really difficult things you just kind of got in these blocks of pain, didn't you? All the patriarchy and all the problems, and then all the things that we could be, which kind of really powerfully juxtapose how we process things and what the problems are. I thought it was quite a binary feeling.
Yeah.
That there was, I wrote down binary somewhere. Yes, and I thought, you talk a lot about more and then less, and I think that really coheres with your idea. It's not less is more, it's doing more with less.
Yes. Brilliant. Thanks.
And then as the play went on, I thought Act 2 was really interesting, and I don't know if other people thought about this, whether I thought it was quite, it reminded me very much of 7 Jewish Children in the sense of it was almost like an anti-A-N-T-E conversation. So it's like, how do we start to make change? We have to sort of think about starting to make change before we make change. So it's like, what are we going to tell our daughter? It's that sort of thing rather than telling the daughter something. So it's kind of like the pre-conversation. And I thought it was really powerful with the 3 different voices, because effectively you are saying the same thing, but everybody will be saying it in a different way. So it was like what John was saying. Simon was saying earlier that. We are a society, it's a societal problem, disability, that's, we all have to embrace, but we all embrace it differently because we're individuals, so you've got that kind of separation. And then obviously Act 3 was a very powerful kind of, so here we are, what are you going to do about it? That was very similar to Commonwealth,
yes,
isn't it, at the end?
yes. It is
so
like Commonwealth, but with 3 people that I have described as that. Yeah, it's got a lot of connections and relationships to the idea of meeting. That play is also about meeting. Wow, yeah, okay. So, I mean, if you mention Carol Churchill in the same...
But the structure is very similar, isn't it? We know didn't we, in making meaning, and it's all these sharp sort of interchanges between characters that are quite repetitive.
Yeah. A big influence on me in the structure of this was Here We Go. Did you see Here We Go?
No, but I did hear it was amazing.
Yeah, we're three acts. It's a 3-act structure, and it just is it pushes very differently in each 3 acts, and it kind of attacks the same idea of representation. So it loomed large in my thinking. Yeah, wow. But I hadn't made the connection to 7 Jewish Children, but you're right. There's that thing of
we need to do something.
We need
what
to
are we
do
going to
something.
talk about?
We need
How
to
are we
do
going to
something.
present this?
That's interesting. Thanks. I thought you were going to ask me about the Milan conference. That's great. Thanks for your response.
Can we talk a little bit about the structure? With everybody, because the structure, although it was 3 acts, it was an interesting structure in terms of the way space changes and the way we move between different spaces in the play, but we're staying in the same space, and we're part of an audience, and then we're part of a summit, and we're 1,000 years in the future, and then 5 years in the past. How did that feel to everybody? Did you go on that journey? Did it feel like you were being taken on it? Yes,
yeah,
Tom.
that's a good question.
I quite enjoyed the disparity in length between Act 1, which is very short, snappy text, as Bradley was saying, but the length of the act is massive compared to all the acts that come after it, and it gets shorter and shorter, which I really enjoy. That it won't in 1,000 years in the future, so far away. They've got this perfect society, and everything's great. And then we go just a bit back before everything began becoming hunky-dory. And it's still a length, and the monologue is exactly the same.
It's exactly
Yeah,
the same.
okay. Because
It's
I
just
heard
delivered in
it a couple of
three-
times and I was like, this seems very similar, but I cannot know for sure.
It's amazing, you know, it was a big ask because I did read it with some people and we just got to that bit and they said, well, if it's the same, then let's just read it once. And I said, I really want to hear it.
Yeah, that's not the point, yeah.
No, and there's definitely an effect that has, especially, I'm going to veer away from the science side just for the moment because everything else I say will be connected to it, because that's just how my mind is geared. But with everyone doing the monologue and trying to imagine that you've got the sign version, the spoken, and the foreign language. I'm not going to ask those questions yet. There's lots of other questions, but with the length, just the length of it, it's as far as I in my mind, it's as concise as it can possibly be, whilst also pretty much covering
the speeches.
Covering
There's a lot in it, yeah.
that entire concept of this society can't continue as it is, and then we come to the summit itself, which is, as I heard you say, like a page text. Yeah, and it's just, and that's the moment that changed everything. The lights out moment that's mentioned everywhere else except for the summit, I think. Which I really enjoyed that as well. But yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Other people should talk before I start going on about science.
I'm really interested to hear you. I'm going to respond to you then. I'm really interested to hear you say that thing about as concise as it possibly can be, because there's been a tussle in me writing it in terms of getting stuff in, but then also holding a duration. There is going to be, so when you read it, in the period of time that it took you to read it, or however long it takes Stephen Collins, who's the performer who'll perform it in Brighton, that will be just someone signing. That's my image, you know, that's when I had the image of someone signing. That'll be what happens then. And there'll be some people in the audience who get really pissed off with that. And then they'll hear it, and I hope I've given the signal. We're just going to say the same thing 3 times. Everybody's going to say pretty much the same thing. And then it'll come round again, and they'll get it in English, and then it'll come round again, and they'll get it in Urdu, or whatever language we end up landing on. Which again for me is like presenting another thing. You know, not only are we dealing with 2 languages, and then we've momentarily played with other language in the first act, but then now I'm going to give it to you again, but in a language that you may or may not understand, in the same way that you may or may not understand BSL. And so yeah, I'm glad that you say that about it's as concise as it can be, because there's a tussle in me about, is it too long or is it not long enough, you know?
I think it's about right, because I was just thinking about how that would play out on stage, and there will be some people who are privileged because they can either sign
They can
and
do both, yeah.
understand English, or they're bilingual with the other language that you use.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the kind of the white hegemonic people who come to see your show possibly won't be in that privileged position. So it was rather like when we went to see Oil, and there was quite a long session of Farsi on stage and quite a lot of Chinese.
Right.
And we were in the Almeida.
Yeah.
On a Thursday night or something. So, you know, there wasn't an awful lot of audience members who could understand either of those 2 languages from where I was sitting. And a Chinese girl next to me said it's so nice to see an ethnic actress using her own language.
Yeah.
And it's rare, it's really rare.
It's really rare. And I'm trying to find a performer at the moment to do, and it's much harder than I thought it would be. Because there is also a request, I suppose, to what kind of performer is performing this text. You know, it's to do. You know, it's interesting. Yeah, I don't know who they are yet. I'll know when I find them. I'll know when I find them.
I like what people are saying about the kind of moments of waiting and reward that come with what kind of modes of understanding you have within the text, and I think that's really nice, and that our sort of acknowledgement that would play out quite differently from the reading we've received today as well.
Yeah.
And that kind of question of form ties in with how you use language, and you were sort of talking a little bit about the language, weren't you, Tom, when you were saying about sort of the clarity, was it the word you used?
I can't remember. I've got plenty of other bits I wanted to jump at, but I want to make sure people have a chance to talk before I go really full on sign.
Maybe we should talk about the language, because the way that you use words is quite Andy Smith, isn't it?
Yes.
You're a concise communicator. You favour very simple words that you were saying that say everything.
Concise.
Yeah, I repeat myself a bit as well.
And there's a repetition there. Do we want to talk a little bit about that at all?
I'm interested in the symmetry and the repetition because of the whole sign question. Because it's not a literal it can never be a literal translation of English, and how the experience of reading it feels very symmetrical, and like they finish each other's sentences, and how that might be disjointed or how that might be achieved in performance, and what that'll look like. I think that's going to be so fascinating.
There's going to be a big challenge, and also, you know, the gaps that will appear, the oral gaps that will appear, oral as in heard, not as in spoken. Kind of loom large in my mind. It's great to hear it all, because I'm still working on how long it lasts and if it's doing what I want it to do, and all of those technical questions that I'm worried about. But also just to hear it all in relation to how it pans out, and that how much you will see signs repeated. You know, the sign for summit and the sign for lights out, which is this. Lights out, which is a kind of lovely thing to see that again and again and again from really early on. So yeah, I don't know. It's going to be really interesting, and it's going to be a challenge in terms of rehearsing it. But we did a week of art research and development last year at home in Manchester with Stephen and Alicia, who are both going to be in it in May, and it feels possible. You know, one of the things that what do you want to find out with this week of research and development? I want to know if this is possible, and it became possible. So I hope it's still possible in April.
I imagine the movements would be quite hypnotic as well because there's so much repetition. Would you have the same movement?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, because running on from what you said, there's going to be inevitable fragmentation of the piece because of the 3 dimensions of the language, especially when you add in your I don't really know how to say it, but that one. But specifically from the sign point of view, because you must have come across this, there are certain like paragraphs that can be signed in about a second.
Yeah.
And there are singular words that take an entire minute to sign, due to context.
Yeah.
And so there will be a difference in timings, and obviously you'll find that out as you go through the rehearsal process. But what you were saying with the hypnotism of it depends what kind of angle you go at the signing with, because it depends on Stephen, how he signs. Because you have sign poetry and you have VV, which visual vernacular, which Simon mentioned, which you probably won't use VV because it won't inform your idea.
BSL, yeah.
But in that kind of sense, there's also signed poetry, which uses BSL signs, but isn't innately BSL. It's much more about creating an image and creating like a picture of sorts, which depends on Stephen, if he's more a conversational signer or he uses stage sign. It depends on his preferences. But
it's also about what we're working out together.
Yeah.
So I'm working with him, and also with a woman called Claire Lamont, who runs the course that Simon was talking about at the Conservatoire of Scotland. And Rita, I can't remember her surname, so at the end of March we're going to meet, the 4 of us are going to sit in a room and talk about how this is translated and what we're looking for, what we're looking for.
That was what I was going to mention. As Simon also mentioned with voice gloss and back translation, that's where because I assume you're not having someone voice the signer, because that seems to be against the idea. Yeah, it's definitely okay. Yeah,
so when they were speaking, a lot of the time the people were speaking chorally today. Yeah. It's sign and spoken.
It's just going to be sign. There will be no support on that.
And if they don't meet each other, if the sign takes longer, we just wait for the sign to finish.
Yeah, which actually gives you a lot of a, not easier per se, but more streamlined process, because if you had a voice class.
Yeah.
But yeah, with back translation and things like that, I was going to mention how, like, when you do have a voice class, there might be moments when that voice class has to stop speaking. They might be at a certain point in the text, and they deliberately stop speaking here, because this entire line, or this small bit here, is going to take, like, a paragraph to sign, so they wait until that person's finished signing that and then say it. Or it can be the other way round. They have to go ahead because the sign is going to catch up so quickly.
Yeah.
But you've got that in the sense of, it's quite good that you're quite reflexive about your piece. You're very, once it's kind of moved away from your native language, you're very aware of the fact that you might not have quite as much control over it anymore.
Yeah.
And inevitably you have to let go of that, because it will change. It's not gonna be the same. As long as you focus on translating the meaning, it still will communicate the same.
Yeah.
And
that's my hope.
Focus.
That's my hope. So, you know, it's interesting. Let's see. And you know, I am fortunate enough to have said to people, can you come and work with me on this? So that we're conscious of that stuff. And me, even today, listening to Simon speak, becoming more conscious of it. And thinking, oh, right, okay, you know. The territory is, you know, without sounding patronising, really fascinating. And also in terms of speed of work, that was one of the brilliant things about the R&D period for me, is that I've always favoured quite a slow approach. I like the slow approach. And when you're working in a room with two interpreters and a deaf and silent performer, you really have to take your time. And it's brilliant, because you just really consider what you're saying, how you're saying things, where you're going with stuff. You have to really, work on, check in with yourself a lot. And but progressively, I think you get not more done, but you get as much done, even though it feels like everything's slowed down. It's really healthy. It felt really healthy. Good.
I think that's really interesting, isn't it? About sort of the what lined up in this reading isn't going to line up in the performance, and the sort of the disruption to both the play, the conventions, and also your role. It's really interesting in the whole process. So we've talked a little bit about structure, and we've talked about language and form. I'd like to touch on themes and sort of the ideas of the play a little bit, and what you guys thought of the whole idea of what was happening a little bit in the play. Did anybody want to say anything?
Good, that's good. Good question.
About that? About what you thought was the speakers were talking about, what this summit was, what had happened.
Was it about the Milan conference?
Was it about the Milan conference? What was this idea about? There was quite a few, there was a repetition of some keywords, well, keywords from my perspective: crisis, change, that kept coming up.
What was happening?
What were they talking about? Yeah.
I think,
okay, go on.
UK.
Sorry.
Yeah. I just think the quote. I just like having. Oh, sorry, just ruined your whole script. Oh, brilliant! Cool. The quote on the front literally just summarises exactly all the themes. To hope is to give yourself to the future, and the commitment to the future makes the present inhabitable. Is actually what is being addressed throughout the whole performance. Is like there's a hope of this future world that's going to be like idyllic, and everything's going to be great. So then it makes the present like you don't want to be here now. You want to get to that prospect. So yeah, that's what I was just cause I was thinking, and then I looked at that and I was like, we'll just say that. But then obviously you know that quite well, so you might be like, yeah, literally.
There's a bit where the speakers rather than characters are in the present moment, but they want to get to the future.
Yeah.
And the future looks good.
Yeah.
Looks better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody else want to add to that?
That's interesting. There's hope in it. That's good news.
That's hope.
Good news.
I mean, I'm probably just a cynical old person, but when I was hearing this perfect world, I was thinking, is this really so perfect?
No, it's not, is it?
Is this the world that, you know, do we want to live in a perfect world? Or maybe actually it's the imperfections of our world that make us love it in some way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, utopias are complicated, aren't they? And funnily today I heard in a way the first act. Yeah, it's almost like robotic in a way. It's repetitions that suddenly you kind of get to this thing of who is talking here? Who is talking?
But I like that because there were times when I thought, yay, this is what I want. This is what I want to have. And I think, oh, hang on a minute, it's like be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
It might not look like, but that still places the onus on us to do so. Because look at the present, something's got to change.
Something has, hasn't it? I hope it has.
But I like that because you can never sort of represent utopia. You can just hint at it in a way.
Yeah.
In that respect, I think it's quite interesting in that, as with a lot of your work, we don't have like a massive set and costume, and it's seen almost like I could be wearing what I'm wearing now. It's this place here. I like this. You would always say like this, somewhere like this, something like this. It's quite interesting in that it almost feels like both impossible, and that it's almost like dream-like. There's nothing solid about it. There's nothing solid. There's no real, like you've said, we are here now, and we're kind of, okay, we're here now. But you're also not really here now. We are still. This is a chair in Brazil, but it's also a chair in Reading.
It's also a chair in Reading at the same time. That's right. That's exactly right.
So the form facilitates the content, but the content still feels impossible in some way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
In the same way that Andrew Scott is Hamlet, but he's still Andrew Scott. You know what I mean? You don't pretend that he's anything other than that, because he is also that. It is also that.
And that's again what's quite interesting about the characters. Like, I might not be able to form my thoughts very well here because I wanted to ask in the chat, but I was like, I don't know how to form this thought. Like, the fact that the characters, for one, I don't know if you're keeping with this, but they're nameless.
Yeah.
There's almost like that kind of Eddie Man feel, and at the same time, say in how it's read, like we all did a slightly different reading of the same things, or
the reading was great.
Obviously, the physical identities of the actors you choose are going to be more diverse than we are.
So it says it's like a universal message. Like it affects everyone. I think that's what you're producing, great. Like on this, and what a great platform to like educate people on. Like,
there's a call for action, I think.
It is a call for action.
The first act seemed like a cry for help almost. The sort of. It's not just me, this is bad. Can anyone do that? Probably not. I've written. I've sort of said with certain words, but effectively, it's a political act, isn't it? Because you basically get people in a room and you ask them to think about themselves differently by almost lulling them with this sort of hypnotic language and then blasting them with these real problems, like 14 problems or something in blocks of 4 or 5 things.
Capitalism.
All the isms and all the archies and you think, oh my god, that does seem really, 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 really difficult. And then it's about, then Act 2 is kind of, you've got to take the belief or make that step before you make the change. It's all about what you do now, and using such. I thought at some point there's a little bit of imagery there about mountains to climb, and it almost looked like sort of faith-based imagery, but you use very secular language. You're not alienating anybody by sort of, using parables or bits from the Quran or you know what I mean. It's very. And I thought actually, now I can think about it even more, I was wondering why one was speaking more chorally with the other two, and then of course that's because he or she will be signing. He will be signing, and in a way that's a very political act as well, because you're privileging the people who can sign read above people who can't, and you're basically saying these people matter as much as everybody else, but they've pretty much been ignored, since 1886 or whenever.
Yeah.
They've been silenced, haven't they? So it's
Since
the voices.
The conference.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, there is. I mean, there is a very conscious thing of this. The first thing that happens is someone signs a line, and then someone interprets the line and speaks it. Good. And yes, I hope it's political. Someone has said to me, this isn't political, and it's not. And I go, oh man, really? I really hope it is. And I suppose it's all to do with, what your definitions of those things are. And that's all fine.
But then that's kind of what the play is anyway. It's someone else's interpretation of it.
Yeah.
You all talking about representation. So one person's going to be like, it's a political play, and then someone else will be like, no.
Yeah.
So that's quite interesting in that you have got such different responses from it, because even though you're like, no, also kind of, that's what I'm playing. Just make it into a positive for you.
Thanks, I want to make open texts. I always want to try and make things that are open enough, that have space for people to pour themselves into them and be participants at the various meetings that are taking place and think about the things that they want to think about. When the word capitalism or patriarchy is mentioned, then everybody's going to have a different response or reaction to what those things are. So I hope that the text is simultaneously, ambiguity is a difficult thing, but I hope it's open enough and kind of simple enough in terms of its story, in that it's just 3 different versions of the story of the summit. One that's 1,000 years in the future, one that's 5 years ago and it needs to happen, and one that's here and now, and that only lasts a page, and then the lights go out, the play ends, and we have to get up and get on with it. I often think of pieces that I make and talk a lot about the work that I'm involved in making as a prologue. It comes a lot from a play called Defending the Audience by Peter Handke, which you may or may not have read. There's a line in that play where they say, this is a prologue. This is a prologue. It's the start of the rest of your life. And so the play ends, and we get on with changing things, I hope.
But that's also to do with the time structure, I think.
Yeah.
You spend so much time in the future, and then you go back and you realise, actually, since 2012 things definitely got worse.
Yeah, they really have, haven't they? Who'd have thought it was possible?
And then when the lights go down, it's like the lights come up on the audience.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at the moment when change begins to happen. So what do we do about that?
Yeah.
I really like that sense of the time. The time actually, it's way up there, then it's there, and then suddenly, hey, it's here, right here, right now.
That's why it's quite nice when it cuts off, and you're like, we're just reading that line, you're like, wait, no, we don't know.
I think just talking about time, it might be time to wrap up here. So I just want to say a huge thanks, and
thanks
also
to the readers, to everybody who listened. I feel immeasurably better about the whole thing.
If you do have additional thoughts, and I'm sure you will do, would you mind sending them to me? And what I can do is collate them and send them to Andy.
That'd be great. That'd be great, yeah.
Excellent. And I'd be delighted if you could join us for our In Conversation in but 10 minutes' time with John and Andy.
It's great. It's great.
Thank you for sharing.
You're great. This is great. It's really brilliant for me. She's great, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's great.
Well done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so no.